She invited her ex to our wedding and told me if I loved her, I'd understand. So I invited his wife as my plus one. The rehearsal dinner exploded, and that night marked the beginning of my new life without her. That I used to think the worst part of wedding planning was the endless debates over seating charts, flower colors, and whether we really needed a champagne tower. Turns out, none of that even makes the top 10. The real nightmare comes when the person you're about to marry drops a bomb on you that changes everything. It started 2 months before the wedding. We were in the living room, surrounded by half-finished invitation envelopes, when my fiancée, let's call her Claire, casually said, "Oh, by the way, I invited Mark to the wedding." I blinked. Mark? She didn't even look up from the envelopes. My ex. I thought I'd misheard. You invited your ex? To our wedding? Yeah, she said, in that tone people use when they're sure they're being reasonable. We've stayed friends, and it would feel wrong not to include him. He was such a big part of my life. If you loved me, you'd understand. I can't even describe the cocktail of emotions that churned in me in that moment. Shock, anger, a weird hollow ache in my chest. I wanted to laugh, because it sounded like a parody of those nightmare relationship posts people share online. But this was real. I remember staring at her, studying her face. There wasn't a hint of malice in her expression. She actually believed what she was saying. To her, this was about openness and maturity. To me, it was a slap in the face. And yet, I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't beg her to reconsider. I just said, calmly, "I do understand." She smiled, relieved, and kissed me on the cheek. "I knew you would. You're the best." Then she went back to sealing envelopes like nothing had happened. What she didn't know was that a switch had flipped in my head. That night, I lay awake turning it over. Claire's ex, Mark, wasn't just an ex, he was the guy she'd dated on and off for years, the guy who'd strung her along, cheated, and ghosted her multiple times. She used to cry in my arms about him. She used to tell me she was done being treated like a backup option. And yet, here she was, inviting him to our wedding, as if he were some kind of honored guest. I thought about what it meant, not just the disrespect, but the lack of boundaries. If she couldn't see why this was wrong, what else would she dismiss under the banner of, "If you loved me, you'd understand"? That's when the idea came to me. Not out of pettiness, but out of something sharper, clarity. I pulled out my phone, found Mark's social media, and scrolled. And that's when I discovered something that made me almost laugh out loud. Mark was married, had been for 3 years. His wife, Anna, even posted pictures of them with their toddler, smiling like the picture-perfect family. So Claire wanted to invite Mark? Fine. I'd extend an invitation too. The next day, I tracked down Anna's professional email. She ran a small photography business. I wrote her a message. Not accusatory, not dramatic. Just straightforward. "Hi Anna, I'm engaged to Claire. She mentioned that she invited Mark to our wedding. Given the circumstances, I thought you should know. If you'd like to attend as my plus one, the invitation is open." I hit send and sat back, heart pounding. Anna replied within an hour. Her tone was cool, professional, but there was an edge beneath it. "Thank you for letting me know. Yes, I'd like to attend." And that was that. In the weeks that followed, Claire buzzed around in bridal bliss. Cake tastings, dress fittings, late-night Pinterest binges. She occasionally mentioned how mature it was of me to support her friendship with Mark. Each time, I smiled and said, "Of course. I understand." Meanwhile, Anna and I exchanged a few polite emails. She confirmed she'd be there, asked what the dress code was, and even joked, this might be more entertaining than a Netflix drama. The night of the rehearsal dinner finally arrived. It was held at a fancy restaurant downtown, all warm lighting and clinking glasses. Family and friends filled the room, laughter and chatter bouncing off the walls. Claire was glowing, fluttering around like the star of her own movie. And then the door opened. In walked Mark. Smug, confident, exactly the way I remembered from Claire's stories. He looked around, then spotted Claire. They hugged, longer than necessary, while people watched awkwardly. Claire beamed, introducing him as her dear friend. And then, 2 minutes later, the second door opened. Anna stepped in. Elegant dress, calm smile, eyes sharp as a blade. She walked straight past Mark, straight past Claire, and came to stand beside me. She slipped her arm through mine like we'd known each other forever. "Thank you for inviting me," she said, just loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. The room went silent. Mark's face drained of color. Claire's smile faltered, confusion flickering across her features. That was the moment everything shifted. The silence that fell over the rehearsal dinner was the kind that presses against your eardrums, like the air itself is holding its breath. Every clink of silverware, every shuffled chair, sounded deafening in the hush. Anna's hand rested lightly on my arm, poised but steady. Her composure was impeccable. She looked like she'd rehearsed this moment, though I knew it had only been a few exchanged emails. Claire blinked rapidly, her lips parting but no words forming. Mark looked like a man who had just been caught naked in a spotlight, fumbling for a towel that wasn't there. Anna, he croaked, finally finding his voice. What are you doing here? Anna's smile was cool, almost polite. I'm here with my date. She squeezed my arm gently. I was invited, after all. The ripple that ran through the room was almost audible, a collective intake of breath, heads swiveling between us, eyes wide with dawning comprehension. A cousin of Claire's actually whispered, "Oh my God." Claire's voice cracked like glass. What? What do you mean, date? He's my fiancé. Yes, Anna said, her tone still calm. And you invited my husband. I thought it only fair I come too. You could have heard a pin drop. Mark's face went from red to pale to an unhealthy shade of gray. He opened his mouth, shut it again, and finally hissed, Anna, we should talk outside. Anna didn't even look at him. No, we'll talk right here. Seems like everyone deserves to hear the truth. Claire turned to me, eyes wide and frantic. What is this? Did you know? I met her gaze steadily. I told you I understood. And I do. I understand perfectly. Her mouth opened, then shut, trembling. She glanced around, realizing the audience wasn't just watching. They were hanging on every second. Mark's voice broke into the quiet, sharp and defensive. This is ridiculous. Anna, you're overreacting. Claire and I are just friends. Everyone knows exes can be friends. Friends. Anna's tone hardened, the smile gone now. Friends don't spend late nights texting about how unhappy they are. Friends don't reminisce about what they miss. Friends don't agree to meet up behind their spouse's back. Gasps scattered across the tables. Someone dropped a fork. Claire's aunt muttered a horrified, "Oh no." Claire went rigid. Mark, she hissed. You promised. She stopped herself too late. The words slipped out like a confession, and the room erupted in murmurs. Anna turned to her with a look of pity so sharp it cut deeper than anger. He's always promising, isn't he? Claire's face crumpled. It's not like that. We weren't. I didn't. But no one believed her. Not after that slip. Not after Anna's calm, devastating revelations. Mark tried to stand taller, to salvage some dignity, but he looked like a child caught stealing cookies. This is being blown out of proportion. Claire and I are friends, that's all. Then why? Anna asked softly. Did you tell her you wished you'd married her instead of me? The room exploded. Half the guests gasped out loud. The other half whispered furiously to each other. Claire's mother covered her mouth with both hands. Her father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. Claire's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked small. Not glamorous, not confident, just small and fragile under the weight of her own choices. I leaned back in my chair, silent. I didn't need to add anything. The work was being done for me. Anna delivered the final blow with precision. You two deserve each other, but not at the expense of me, and not in secret. So enjoy your friendship. She let the word drip with sarcasm. Then she lifted her glass to me. Thanks for the invitation. I raised mine back. Anytime. The rest of the dinner unraveled like a bad play where all the actors forget their lines. Conversations died, plates went untouched, and Claire sat frozen, tears slipping silently down her cheeks while Mark whispered frantic excuses she wouldn't meet his eyes for. When the evening ended, I stood, thanked everyone for coming, and walked out without looking back. Anna walked beside me, poised and steady, like she'd just won a chess game in 3 moves. Outside, under the cool night air, she let out a long breath. Well, that was something. Legendary, I said. She gave a small laugh, though her eyes were tired. You know, I should be furious with you for dragging me into this. You're welcome, I said, and for the first time in weeks, I felt free. That night, I checked into a hotel instead of going home. By morning, my phone was buzzing with messages. Long apologies from Claire, angry texts from her family, even a voicemail from Mark demanding to know why I'd set him up. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called my lawyer. Update 1. The morning after the rehearsal dinner felt like waking up after a storm. Quiet, but with debris everywhere. My phone was a battlefield. 47 unread messages, 19 missed calls, and 6 voicemails. Claire had sent long paragraphs, alternating between apologies and accusations. You humiliated me in front of my whole family. It was just a misunderstanding. You overreacted. We can still fix this if you just talk to me. Don't throw away everything we've built. Her mother's messages were harsher. How dare you ambush our daughter like that? You've ruined the wedding. We'll be sending you the bills. And then there were Mark's voicemails, a mix of anger and panic. He accused me of manipulating Anna, of making a scene, and even threatened to clear things up if I didn't. His desperation bled through every word. But Anna? She'd sent me one text. Just 3 words. Well played, partner. I didn't reply, but I smiled when I read it. By noon, I'd met with my lawyer. He'd been on retainer for years, a precaution I never thought I'd need. Now he was my lifeline. I explained everything, handed over the screenshots of Claire's conversations with Mark that Anna had shared, and laid out my decision. I want the engagement dissolved. No settlements, no drawn-out arguments. Clean break. He nodded. Given the circumstances, this will be straightforward. But it won't be quiet. Be ready for fallout. I already am. That evening, I returned to the apartment Claire and I shared, or rather, had shared. She was there, waiting, mascara streaked, eyes red and swollen. You're really doing this? She asked, her voice small. Yes. She moved toward me, hands shaking. It was a mistake. I shouldn't have let him come between us. But it was nothing physical. Nothing happened. Please, don't throw away 4 years. I looked at her, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. But then I remembered her words, whispered in Mark's ear at the wedding. Not really. It doesn't count when he's boring. You already threw it away, I said quietly. Her face crumpled. You're making a huge mistake. No, you did. I placed the envelope with the legal documents on the coffee table, picked up the bag I'd packed the night before, and walked out. She didn't follow. The chaos truly exploded 2 days later. Anna called me, her voice calm but edged with grim amusement. You'll want to see this. Check Facebook. I did. Someone, no one knew who, had posted screenshots from Mark's phone. Conversations between him and Claire stretching back months. Late-night confessions, flirty messages, not quite explicit, but intimate enough to leave no doubt. The caption read, "When the best man and the bride-to-be forget what loyalty means." It went viral among our circles and ours. Comments flooded in, people taking sides, most of them against Claire and Mark. Their reputations were shredded publicly. Claire's family panicked. Her mother called me again, this time sobbing instead of shouting. Please, don't let this get out further. Think of our family. It's already out, I said, and I didn't post it. Mark's wife, Anna, handled things with icy grace. She filed for divorce immediately, citing infidelity. When the news spread through their elite social circles, Mark was ostracized overnight. He lost contracts, friends, invitations. His golden boy reputation turned to ash. Claire tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, claiming the messages were taken out of context. But no one bought it. Her friends distanced themselves. Her job, tied to client trust, began to slip away. And me? I stayed silent. I didn't post. I didn't defend myself. I didn't attack either. My silence said enough. Weeks passed, and the dust settled. I moved permanently to a new city for work, throwing myself into my career. The promotion I'd been offered, the one Claire had once said wasn't exciting enough, turned out to be the best decision of my life. 6 months later, I was earning more than I'd ever dreamed, building connections that mattered, living on my own terms. Claire reached out again, this time with a handwritten letter. She wrote about regret, about loneliness, about missing me. She admitted she'd been blinded by her ego, by the thrill of attention from someone like Mark. I read it once, then filed it away in a drawer. Not to revisit, just to remind myself how far I'd come. Anna and I stayed in touch, oddly enough. We weren't romantically involved, not even close, but there was a strange camaraderie between us. Two people burned by the same fire, finding a kind of friendship in the ashes. Sometimes we'd trade updates, laugh at the irony of it all, share a drink when our paths crossed. As for Claire and Mark, last I heard, they tried dating each other after everything collapsed. It didn't last. Too much baggage, too much bitterness. They destroyed themselves trying to have what they thought they wanted. And me? I walked away clean, stronger, freer, with a story that people still whispered about, the rehearsal dinner that became legendary. And whenever I think back, I remember the look on Claire's face when Anna introduced herself as my date. That moment alone was worth everything. Final update. A year passed. Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. I had built a new routine in my new city. Early mornings at the gym, long workdays filled with challenges that actually excited me, and weekends spent exploring places I'd never thought to visit. For the first time in years, I wasn't defined by a relationship. I was just me. That's when I met Sophie. We bumped into each other, literally, at a bookstore downtown. I had an armful of biographies. She was balancing a coffee and a stack of novels, and the collision sent one of her books tumbling onto my foot. Sorry, my fault, she said, crouching down to grab it. I handed her the book before she could. No harm done, but I have to say, solid choice. It was the same author I had just picked up. We ended up talking for nearly 20 minutes in that aisle, laughing about our shared love of obscure history books. When she gave me her number, in case you finish yours before I do, I knew I'd stumbled into something different. We started seeing each other regularly. At first, just casual coffee dates, then dinners, then weekend hikes. Sophie was everything Claire hadn't been. She didn't care about appearances, didn't measure me against some invisible standard. She listened, genuinely listened, when I talked about my work. She challenged me in conversations, laughed at my bad jokes, and never once made me feel like I wasn't enough. It was slow, steady, and real. And for the first time in a long while, I began to believe in love again. Then one afternoon, my past came crashing back. I had just finished a meeting and was grabbing a quick lunch when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick it up. Hello. The voice on the other end was shaky but unmistakable. It's me, Claire. I froze for a second. I hadn't heard her voice in months. Not since the night I'd walked out of our apartment. What do you want, Claire? I asked flatly. She sighed, and for a moment, I could hear muffled sobs. I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I thought I wanted excitement, attention, someone on my level. But Mark was a disaster, and after everything fell apart, I see it now. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Please, can we just talk? Her voice cracked on the last word. I leaned back in my chair, looking out the window at people hurrying past on the street. A year ago, hearing that might have torn me apart, maybe even tempted me to consider it. But now, I felt nothing, just clarity. There's nothing left to talk about, I said. You didn't just hurt me, Claire. You disrespected me. Publicly. Repeatedly. You chose him over me. And when that burned down, you expected me to be standing here, waiting. I'm not. She tried again, words tumbling out. I know I don't deserve another chance, but maybe we could start over? Even just as friends? Please. I can't. I cut her off. No, Claire. You don't get to rewrite the ending. You wrote it already. There was silence on the line, then a choked sob, and the call ended. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then set it face down on the table. Sophie texted me minutes later, asking if I wanted to grab dinner after work. I smiled, instantly lighter. Weeks later, I ran into Claire by accident. It was at a mutual friend's birthday gathering. I hadn't realized she'd be there until I walked in and saw her, sitting off to the side with a drink in her hand. She looked different, tired, older than her age, like the year had worn her down. When she spotted me, her eyes widened, then softened into something almost pleading. I gave a polite nod and kept walking. Sophie was with me that night, her hand slipping easily into mine as we joined the rest of the group. She had this effortless warmth that drew people in. Everyone seemed to gravitate toward her, laughing, sharing stories, enjoying her presence. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Claire watching. Her expression shifted from shock to bitterness to something else, regret, maybe, but I didn't go over. I didn't know her that. Later that night, as Sophie and I were leaving, Claire finally stood up and tried to approach. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Sophie turned to me with a smile. Ready to go, love? She asked. I nodded, kissed Sophie's forehead, and we walked out together. Behind me, I didn't look back. It's been nearly 2 years now since the rehearsal dinner that changed everything. Claire never stopped trying, at least for a while. A message here, an email there, even a letter once. But eventually, the attempts faded. From mutual friends, I heard she bounced between jobs, struggled to rebuild her reputation, and never really found her footing again. Mark was long gone. Last anyone heard, he'd moved overseas, chasing some opportunity that fizzled out. Me? I built a new life. Sophie became my partner in every sense of the word. Supportive, challenging, kind. We traveled, laughed, built memories that didn't need drama to feel real. Sometimes, people ask if I regret how it all went down. If I regret letting Claire crash and burn without offering a hand. And the truth is no. Because I did offer her everything, once. She didn't value it. She wanted more. Now she knows what more looks like. And I know what enough feels like.